You know, we were talking about London. Is that where you've always been? Have you ever lived anywhere else?
No, I'm London through and through. So I grew up in West London, a place called Hammersmith that's on the river in West London. And then grew up in Twickenham, which is kind of near Richmond, southwest London.
Okay.
And then I've lived in all London, Tooting. I've lived in Clapham. I've lived in Camden. I've lived in Clerkenwell. So all fairly central. I kind of moved in from the west, and I've been centralish ever since.
Okay. Do any of those places, maybe the places you grew up, are they known for a certain thing? Are they characterized a certain way?
Well, I guess Twickenham is most famous for its rugby ground. There's like an international rugby ground there. It's on the river as well. So I think Richmond, Riverside is pretty popular. Richmond Park used to be one of Henry VIII's hunting grounds, I think.
So it's got some noble history.
Yeah, but the other places, no, they're just kind of London places. I guess Camden's got a reputation for being, you know, the kind of punk thing, and Camden Market, and, you know, Britpop was kind of popular around there. Amy Winehouse used to live there, that kind of thing.
I always wonder about that because, you know, the history and the reality are often different. Like, can you feel that if you go there now? Or does it just kind of feel like, has it gentrified and moved on from those days?
No, I think there's echoes of its sort of rocky past in Camden. Definitely, you know, it's there's kind of graffiti throw-ups of Amy Winehouse, and the Hawley Arms where she used to drink is still a kind of, you know, fairly famous sort of muso pub, and the market is as it was pretty much. I mean, it's changed a bit, but it's still stalls. There's still a couple of punks on the bridge.
Yeah.
But now they've got Instagram accounts and stuff now, and TikTok accounts.
Right. Yeah. You can keep in touch with them now. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny, man. I feel like British people and Europeans in general, you guys just do history better than we do over in the States. There's historic places you can go here, but I kind of feel like it's never respected as much. It's never like maintained as much as you guys do over there.
I mean, yeah, to be fair, we do have thousands more years to deal with.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, and I mean that in a nice way, but yeah, if it was just the last 280 years or whatever, we'd be a bit like, you know, I guess the last 280 years, there's some good stuff happened. But yeah, you feel that in London, definitely, that there's a proper solid underbelly of nourishing history.
Yeah. And I mean, to take it to music, I almost feel the same way about the way you guys do music, because there's the UK in the dance scene. I'm sure you know this as well as I do. Like, the US can always look to the UK to see what's going to be hot here in a couple of years, you know? Like, I always feel like the UK is just a couple leaps ahead. And I think some of that, I've talked to a lot of people about this just because I find it interesting. Like, I think some of it is because the UK and other places too, but I feel like the UK particularly respects the history of the music and the roots of it, and is sort of interested in where it came from and digging into the background, which I think kind of helps spur innovation a little. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I just immediately thought, when you're talking about that, of guys sitting around in studios thinking like, but you know, in 1720 they would have done this or blah, blah. I think it's just a sort of integral part. It just seeps in.
Yeah.
But I mean, you guys in the States smash it. You know, it's like, basically, it seems like we're sort of British and we have these like, oh yeah, let's try this and come up with some really cool new genre or whatever. But then you guys take it and then sheen it up and stylize it, monetize it, make it bigger, make it louder.
Oh, if you want to make it, if you want to make it bigger or louder, you're coming to the right place.
Yeah, so I think it's a good combination, right? It works well. There's some little timid English people thinking up things and playing around with stuff, and then you guys just take it to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you even think about, not to nerd out about this too much, but if you even think about, the roots of dance music, like the roots of house and techno, I mean, it was, started in kind of just like lower middle class neighborhoods in America, was a very underground, very regional thing, kind of got imported to the UK. You guys did whatever you did and sort of shipped it back to us in a form that I think was intriguing enough that then the American machine was sort of able to take it and, really just explode everything.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because even if you think back to, the origins of, garage or garage, that's from the States as well. And I guess, the whole kind of Chicago house thing was the beginning of house music over there. So it's cool. We play this kind of game of transatlantic musical tennis.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I serve the ball over. We're just going to turn this green ball slightly orange, and then we're going to bounce it back to you.
So wait, what are the origins of garage? Like the original origins? This feels like something I should know, but as you were talking, I was like, I'm not sure I know this.
Yeah, see, I mean, I'm not incredibly knowledgeable, but the story goes, it was Paradise Garage. That was Larry Levan's thing.
Right,
that's
garage.
Kind of like the monument of the beginnings of garage, I reckon. But I mean, I'm not at all knowledgeable. People ask me about it the whole time, and I did a podcast last week with someone, and they were really expecting me to be able to describe the origins of garage music, exactly where it came from, which records came out that was seminal, that kind of changed the path of it. But basically, I just talked about it from the point of view of, a 20-year-old in a studio with a load of Akai samplers and a bit of vinyl. That's kind of like, I've experienced the world from inside a studio pretty much.
Right. Well, it's always funny, I think, when people look to anyone who's accomplished something in their field to also be sort of the historian of that field, which I think is almost impossible to do, because usually if you've accomplished something in your field, you were busy doing that thing, right? And I think
good point.
It's hard to have that perspective kind of when you're in the middle of it. But
I think that's true. You're kind of there. I think when you're creating things, especially music, you don't really think about, boundaries or genres, or I should do this. Or if you do start thinking like that, it can go not as well as it could do if you were, had free reign or were able to do whatever you wanted to do. So, I certainly agree. I think there's a place for creators and then a place for analysis of those creations. You find that in, classical music and stuff. I'm sure when Mozart sat down to jam at the piano, or Beethoven or any of those cats, they weren't thinking, oh, it should be, a bit like this, and I can't really do that chord. They were just in the groove, like doing their thing. And it's the hundreds of years afterwards where people have analyzed, Beethoven's toothbrush habits on Sundays, in Vienna or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never thought about the parallels between classical music and dance music in that way, but that's true that at a certain point there, now we think about classical, there's all these overarching structures and music theory. And, we have terms to describe every little thing they did. Whereas in electronic music, which is still a baby genre, in the long-term view of it, I feel like people are inventing new things all the time. Like most of the producers I talk to on this show, especially the younger ones, they're like, oh, dude, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm pretty sure most of it is wrong. And they're the ones making, the most incredible stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is no wrong really in music. And I think, there's a lot to be said for knowing as little as possible and being as free as possible. That's sort of how I got into making garage music was, I didn't follow it at all. I knew nothing about it. I was a drum and bass head, and I was just working in the studio, and it so happened that I had to make a couple of garage tracks. So I literally had no idea what I was doing, and it came out a little bit wonky, a little bit different, a little bit wrong. Right. And that kind of led to a sort of signature sound, I guess.
It's really interesting, man. And yeah, I want to talk about kind of your whole road to that. Just out of curiosity, when you say you were in the studio and you ended up having to make some garage songs, were you at that point kind of just like working with other producers to like support them, whatever projects they were doing at the time?
Yeah, I started off and I was like a T-boy, a runner in the studio when I left college. Because I could play, I played the piano since I was really young, and I was kind of on course to be a concert pianist until I was kind of 12 or 13, I'd say. So I could play, I had chops, and I was making teas and doing patch bass and things like that. But it so happened that, you know, I'd be in the room and they're like, can you play some chords? And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can play this. And so I quickly became involved because I could play stuff, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the key. For anybody, you could apply that even outside of music in terms of like, well, how do I get into X thing? Or, how do I get my foot in the door? It's just figure out the one thing you can do at the one thing you're good at that they don't have, figure out the one way you can fit in. And once you're in there with that one thing that you know how to do, you're indispensable.
Yeah, that's true. You kind of get like a fast track ticket, don't you? It's like you could go around the front and queue with everyone else, or you could be like, oh, actually, I can do this one specific thing. I've got a green wristband. They're like, oh, yeah, sure, you can come in.
Yeah, exactly.
Skip the queue.
Yeah, wristband talk is my kind of talk. Yeah, I'm right there with you. So, the concert pianist thing, I assume you were playing piano then from a very young age.
Yeah, I started when I was 5.
That it sounds like a pretty serious thing. So I have to assume you took to it pretty quickly. Was this the kind of thing your parents got you into and then you just sort of glommed onto?
Yeah, I mean, the story goes that there was a piano at home and I used to just mess around in it. And my mum was kind of like, look, do you want to have some piano lessons? And I was like, yeah, sure. And so I was 5 and started going to piano lessons. And my piano teacher was really good. All her students did competitions the whole time, just local music festivals. So right. She entered me for a competition pretty much as soon as I started. So probably within 6 months, I was doing a local competition, and it was a set piece. So all the kids play the same piece and they're all the same age. So there were like 32 5-year-olds all playing In the Meadow, it was called, this piece. And basically I won. I beat all the girls, and there were like 2 other boys or something. And so I kind of got a buzz for it from there. I'm like, yeah, this is cool. I won something. I got a little medal. So I went on from there and kind of found the sport in it, really.
So it was the competitive thing that really pulled you in.
It was fun just winning stuff and feeling like I was quite good at doing it as well.
Is that something you've taken with you? Are you still like that in your career these days?
Yeah, I'm still very competitive. When I hear a really great record, it's a mixture of like awe and jealousy, I'd say. But that combination of awe and jealousy whips me into trying harder and doing better in what I'm doing. I'd hear records by other people that'd be like, how's he done that? How's he made that record? And then that would send me straight into the studio to try and make something better. And I still get that now. I'm intrigued by stuff that I find very impressive, and I want to analyze it and do something like it myself.
Yeah, there's something to, I kind of know what you're talking about. I don't think of myself as competitive exactly, but I know that feeling when like I'll hear a really good record and I'll get mad. Because it's just so good. And to me, I think why I get mad is it's like, well, the idea was just out there. Anyone could have made it, but it's this person who did it. And so then the wheels start turning of like, oh, well, what other ideas are out there? Like, I want to do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tricky thing, isn't it? To try and stay ahead of what's next, without becoming too conscious of that process as well,
Right.
It's kind of like I want to be completely free and not think about everything, but at the same time, I want to make something that fits in somewhere. But I'm not thinking about that, I'm just going to have fun and do what I like. So yeah, it's it's a funny toss-up between, being deliberate stuff and being completely free, because equally, if you're being completely free, you can just end up making a load of garbage basically for months and months and months.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those. There's certainly a duality I think you have to find in your own brain at a certain point, because the creativity, the pure just sitting down in the studio, kind of opening yourself up to whatever's coming in, you want that to be as loose as possible, but then you kind of almost immediately have to like throw the reins on it and try to steer it once you're in it. It's a really weird, I don't know. I like talking about the creative process, because it really is this bizarre thing where you kind of have to fight yourself at a lot of points.
Yeah. And these things kind of come from nothing. Quite often when I'm doing sessions with other people or it's just me, where you start off, it's just important that you keep going. You might start off with something, someone might bring in like a little sample of audio that's a couple of chords, and we're like, yeah, let's do that. And then within 5 minutes, it's being played in a different instrument. It's like, oh, should we turn that upside down? And you're completely somewhere else. But the important thing is that you started and that you're moving along, because stuff can change so quick. It might be like you're doing a song with someone and suddenly you pitch the whole thing down an octave and try it at 170, and then you filter the whole thing down. It sounds mad. You distort it, sample that, and then you end up with a load of chops, and that turns into something else. So yeah, you've got to you've just got to ride this stuff.
Yeah, and it's a chase too, because that moment when you pitch something down an octave, or when you chop something, or even start it playing from a different place that you didn't mean to, and there's that moment of like, oh, what was that? That kind of moment. That's like, we're all addicted to that, I think. I mean, it's interesting to hear you say too about, wanting it to fit in, but not thinking about it fitting in too much, because that'll ruin it. And for your career especially, I mean, for a certain point, you were so associated with a certain sound and a certain movement, not just your sound, but like the whole movement. I feel like you were one of the figureheads that people would look to for like what's happening in garage and two-step. And I don't know, what was that like? Because it's got to be cool, but then at a certain point, I would imagine you feel like, well, it's a little limiting too.
Yeah, I mean, I've always tried to sort of push the boundaries, and it's funny when I listen back to some of like the remixes, especially that I did for other people around the time of two-step heyday. You can hear I'm really trying not to do the same thing twice. And I'm really trying to push the drum patterns and do things slightly differently. And I've always wanted to do that. And I think when you sort of become established in a certain field, there's an expectation that you should just make that sound. I've definitely done remixes before that I thought completely revolutionary, handed them in, and they're like, it doesn't sound like you. I want it to sound like you. And then you're like, okay, well, I'll just get the drums from that other remix I did, tune them around a bit and do something very similar. And they're like, yeah, that's great. That's what we wanted, So there's a sort of pull thing going on there where you as an individual want to continue to be super creative and do new things. But there's an expectation on the other side that you have this sound. And if we come to you, we expect that sound,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I guess that's the difference of like working for yourself versus working for or with other people too, where at a certain point, if it's just for you, yeah, do whatever you want, follow your muse, push it, all that. But yeah, if it's other people's expectations too, then it's kind of a negotiation.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you were a drum and bass guy before you were a garage guy. I mean, how did dance music even enter your world when you're this classical pianist kid? you're entering your teen years. Was it just partying at a certain point?
Yeah, it was a mixture of, obviously everything outside classical music. So, I had friends at school. There were, the Sony Walkman and the Walkman thing was happening then. And so people would come in with tapes and they'd be taping stuff off pirate radio. And so there was a little group of us at school that got really into that, kind of swapping tapes. And then getting very rudimentary, like belt drive, odds matching turntables, and getting a phonic MRT 60 mixer and doing like really basic mixes. But yeah, I was going out, and it was, kind of before dance music really hit for all of us. I was going out, and it was like a bit more sort of rare groove, like James Brown, those kind of things, and some, actually older music. And then probably around 88 or something, it's where it started to go a bit mad. Suddenly there was a mixture of like UK hip hop with house music, with like 150 BPM, fall to the floor stuff, just a mad hodgepodge of different musical styles. And at the time, it didn't seem like shit. There's all these genres starting up and it's all mad. It just seemed like this is really exciting. Let's just follow it, follow it. So my first experience was from tapes at school, and then from going out. And, I ended up going to the bigger sort of raves around London and Fields, around the M25 and all that kind of thing. So it was good. It was a good time to be alive. I'm glad I experienced the beginning of that.
I mean, it's a legendary time, man. I'm jealous that you were there for it, because the late 80s, early 90s UK rave scene, I mean, people make movies about that. People make documentaries about that. It's, I mean, if you think back to those times yourself, do you have any memories that just like play on a loop that you can just recall? It doesn't even have to be like a good story, but just some crazy place you went or something you heard that flipped your mind upside down?
Yeah, I mean, I have fond memories. I mean, I was like a regular at a place called Laserdrome in Peckham, South London. And one of my friends had a job there, basically. He was part of the video chill out section. So we used to go there like every week, pretty much. We could get in free. We knew everyone in there. We knew all the security and everyone running it. So that was kind of like my home turf, really. But yeah, I just have memories of they had a DJ box up really high in this main room, and just basically going up there, just off my face, just sitting by the DJ and knocking the turntables and just like looking over at what they're playing, So that was kind of like my resident little zone, just annoying the DJs when I was just some punter, basically, But I saw a lot from that spot.
Yeah, well, that I think is telling that, you're out there, you're partying, you're off your face, but still where you're heading is the booth to see what they're playing, Yeah.
Yeah, totally, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's not the choice many partiers make. So that's fun, man. Because I would be doing the same thing for sure.
Yeah.
Was it also the thing? Because again, there's such a reputation to that era, but I never know how much of it is lore versus reality. You hear so much about these like illegal parties that out in a field somewhere where just all of a sudden somebody's farm, a few thousand people show up. I mean, was that kind of thing happening a lot at that point?
Yeah, I guess so. I didn't really go to any of those like super off-grid things. I went to, Rain Dance, Telepathy, Living Dream, all these kind of raves that had flyers. You go to the record shop, there'd be loads of flyers in the record shop. You pick up loads with your records. And, your mates from school would have the one, you'd be like, oh, look, this thing's got, I don't know, Fabio and Groove Rider playing. And it always had like how many kilowatts the sound system was. Right. I used to pay a lot of attention to that. So it's like, look, we can go to this one it's got a 40k rig and it's 20 quid. Or we could go to this one that's 25, but they got an 80k rig and it's Martin Audio, super sound system. So we really, those sort of things appeal to us. But yeah, they were all flyer things. So it wasn't, I didn't go to any, hang out in a phone box waiting for a code word kind of things. Right. They were all, I don't know, thousands of people. But it was really ramshackle. There was like, the organization didn't feel like the organization was lacking, but there was very much a feeling of just everyone's in it together and everyone's going to the same place. It really felt kind of unifying like that. It felt quite safe as well.
Yeah, man, I know what you're talking about. And that's something I don't know if that I'm sure it still exists today in certain underground scenes, smaller off the radar kind of scenes. But what you're talking about, like massives, thousands of people showing up that way. I don't know if that, I feel like the dance music is so just above board at this point that if thousands of people are showing up, it's going to be, a pretty commercial kind of deal at this point.
Yeah, be fully monetized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe that's it. It just wasn't fully monetized yet. I mean, that's actually kind of a good way to think about it.
Yeah, it was just about, people, wanting to listen to very loud music and get off their face, basically.
Yeah. And the excitement for something new, right? Like, I think, I'm sure you've had multiple moments like this. I've had many in my life and my career of, sometimes when you're in the room and you can tell something's starting, that like something exciting is happening, whether it's like the hot new act is here and you're like, oh, this is going to be big in a few years, or whether it's some new tune that everyone loses their shit for, whatever it is, those moments. I do feel like there were more of those back then because everything was new and nobody knew what they were doing. And I think less people were concerned about making money off of it too.
Yeah, but I mean, you're sort of saying that everything was sort of new then. It kind of sounds like there was so much to be discovered, but I still believe that's true now. I mean, If you'd have spoken to someone in 1982 about, the possibility of dance music, they'd be like, well, what's that? We've got all this, we've got the Beatles, we've got funk, we've got all the kind of, post-war stuff. We've got the 1920s stuff. You don't know something till you've heard it, do you really? So it could be that we're at the cusp of the new revolution, and it would be like, 2022 was when it all started, and people will be having an interview in 40 years' time saying exactly the same thing. It's like, oh, it kind of started in the late 80s, but that was the warm-up. And then Matt Cole came out with that amazing seminal record that defined part 2 of dance music.
That's right. They said he couldn't do it, but he proved them wrong, man.
That's right.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, man. And if this career and this life have taught me anything so far, it's that everything is cyclical. Everything comes back around. Nothing is exactly new. It's all kind of, we recycle the past into a new form. So I think you're spot on. Yeah, I'm stoked about music in 2022 in general. Like, this is something I ask people sometimes is like, what you do right now, like, what's the most exciting part? What's the most fun part? What keeps you here doing it at this point in your career?
I'm a making music junkie. Like if I not making music for a couple of weeks, I start to get pretty depressed. I'm sort of addicted to making music, and I'm addicted to creating new things, mostly in the studio, or it does apply. I mean, I could be at home just playing piano things. My favorite thing in music is making something in the studio, playing something on the piano, recording it, going to sleep and waking up. And I have this thought of, oh yeah, I did that yesterday. I can't remember how it goes. I'm just playing something on my iPhone when I'm still in bed. And that just like, that's my reward. I love, I love the making of it. I love everything about studios and tech. And yeah, having that special thing that you've created is kind of what just, keeps me going. I'm fully addicted to that.
Man, yeah. Well, and it's cool that you still are in a way, because I think even for somebody who likes this kind of life and likes doing what you're doing, you do it enough. And I think it's easy to get jaded, and it's easy to kind of, forget the little joys of, oh, this little idea I worked on, what does it sound like? I'm sure you've seen that happen to people in the course of your career. So it's cool to hear that you're still able to kind of just be an excited kid about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I've really grown up at all in some respects, especially musically. I'm still super excited to try new little things or fiddle with knobs and,
Right.
just have fun. I mean, really, I have experienced it where music can become more of a job, and it becomes more of a chore, and it becomes much more, directed by other people if you're working for other people, and it becomes kind of quite serious then. And whilst there's a place for that, I think it's all about, just feeling like you're playing as you did when you were 8 years old and your parents gave you a little toy record player or something like that. It's really about that. And I think if I wasn't making music, I'd still be interested in buying kit, or, if I walk into someone's house and they've got a little setup, I'm just interested in that. I'm not really interested in their garlic jar. I'm interested in, I love gadgets as well and things like that. So it really suits me.
Yeah, absolutely. Was that part of what drew you to working in studios originally? Like beyond just enjoying the music, you wanted to get inside and see how they were making it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I've always loved technology, like I said just then, gadgets. And then I've always loved music. Music for me is very emotional, and it's very much part of the soul, and it's very much expressive. When I grew up playing piano, it wasn't really about anything other than interpretation and performance. And that's what I totally loved. It was this feeling of being able to play these pieces in completely different ways and be encouraged by your piano teacher and get, just high on emotion from playing something. So it was a combination of that mixed with, I love playing with remote control cars and toys. And I loved playing with my dad's hi-fi that he had. And, I remember sitting there one day thinking like, oh, I'd love to just do audio, not pictures, just specialize in just sound. And, I remember sitting in front of my dad's hi-fi. He had like a separate system then, Chrome separate system with an amp, big knobs. And then it had one of those front-loading tape decks. You used to push it up a little kind of ramp and it clicked in. It had a little door. It's amazing. I remember all those bits of kit so well. I remember, gadgets that my dad's friend had when we used to go and visit him in Hampstead on a Sunday. Like I remember he had the yellow sports Walkman. He had like a little credit card, address book that could store hundreds of phone numbers. I remember all these things. Right. So yeah, it's a combination of everything I love. It's the human, expressive, soulful level of music mixed with gadgets.
Yeah, I mean, well, it seems like the you found the perfect thing to do with those two, that combination, man. Does any of that come from your parents? Were they musical or were they technical? What did they do?
And yeah, my parents are musical. My mom didn't work in music, but my dad is an actor and a singer. So he was in a lot of West End shows. He was in Phantom of the Opera, the original cast of that in London, and did a lot of Stephen Sondheim things, and he was in the Royal Shakespeare Company. So there was always a piano at home, and he'd always be playing and singing. And that was mostly songs from the shows, like I said, Songtime or Cole Porter, Gershwin, those kind of things. And his parents, my granny and granddad, they were Welsh and they didn't work in music, but the piano was the thing in the house. They were constantly on the piano, and they'd come to see us at Christmas and they'd be singing carols in the car all the way down. So there was music in my house, definitely.
I would imagine that maybe made it a little easier for your parents to swallow you going like down the music route professionally as well, right?
Yeah, I guess they didn't really ever say anything about that. I mean, when I was younger, I sort of said, you always want to be what your parents are, right? I wanted to be an actor, writer, and a singer like my dad. And my dad sort of actively discouraged me from going into acting, but they never really said anything about music. I think it was quite obvious to them because I was pretty good as a pianist when I was a kid, and I got like scholarship to school and scholarship to Royal College of Music and all this stuff. So it was kind of like I was paying my way already, even at the age of 11, you know.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you're already succeeding on that level or have that aptitude, it's not like, well, how were you at the rest of school?
Yeah, I was pretty good. I'd say I was like, you know, top, it depends which school you're talking about. Yeah, top 10, 20% in my school kind of thing. You know, so I rolled through pretty good, but I wouldn't say I was, you know, academic per se, but I was definitely, you know, switched on and knew what was going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you were pretty directed maybe from a young age. Like it sounds like you were taking yourself and what you were doing seriously, maybe younger than some people. And I think at least for some parents, if you see your kid being self-directed that way, and seeing some success early on, yeah, it's probably just, let them go, let them do it.
Yeah, I think I mean, they did encourage me to play piano, and I was very much, they made me practice. It'd be like, have you done your practice? I certainly didn't glide down the stairs every day and do 3 hours practice. But yeah, I think it became sort of sustaining after a while because I was getting my own buzz from it. And it was something that I was just really good at. You know, I think I was better at making music and playing music than anything else. And so it's just like, well, I'm going to do more of that. You know, it's easier for me.
Was there a time when the piano and the electronic music, the production, the studio stuff, the DJing, did that overlap? Or did you end up kind of dropping the piano for the dance music?
Yeah, I think until I was from the age of 5 till about maybe 13, I was hardcore piano. And then, you know, as I started going out and discovering DJing and records and girls and all that kind of stuff, the piano thing just sort of waned. I still wanted to do it. I stayed having piano lessons till I was, 21. And I was very good. I had a very good foundation, but I went through, the more the DJ thing and the studio fascination increased, the more difficult my piano lessons became, because I'd go to the piano lesson at Royal College of Music and I'd have probably done 2 hours practice in a week. And it's just not a nice feeling when you go to a piano lesson and you haven't, you know, rehearsed or practiced at all. So that I remember that feeling very awkward. But on the other side of that, I was staying up all night, making tracks on my Atari, making cassettes, putting on my Walkman, listening to it all day at school, going back, carrying on, getting very little sleep. And that was fun. And that's kind of what really, you know, springboarded me into messing around like I still do today.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I think that makes total sense in the spirit of what we've already talked about keeping it exciting for yourself and, you know, keeping that spirit of invention and the spark of new ideas and all that. It makes total sense, man, that you were doing it even at that age. And, you know, if we keep going with this a little, you end up eventually working in studios, engineering for other producers, other DJs, that sort of thing. We mentioned at a certain point, you almost sort of accidentally make garage and two-step songs that, was it an immediate thing once you made them that people kind of latched onto them? Like, did you get a different reaction to those tunes than you did from the drum and bass you had been doing previously?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the first things I did with a couple of DJs from London called Ramsey and Fenn. And it was a remix of a Kim Mazel track called, I can't remember which one we did first. Anyway, And I'd never really made a garage thing before, but it was the perfect combination because these two DJs were there who were like very knowledgeable about garage music. They were DJing the whole time. They came into studio with record boxes full of stuff and were like, no, listen to the drums on this, or listen to the way the vocal goes on that. So I kind of absorbed that. And then, it kind of came out of my fingers in a weird way. But to go back to what you asked, yeah, as soon as we'd done that track, suddenly everyone upstairs in the records offices became very excited. And I'm kind of like, what's this about? It's just, it's a bit of garage music. Garage is rubbish, But then the guys would get dub plates cut and they take them out to play. And it went very quickly for me from that stage. I think everyone latched on like, oh, Matt's the guy to go in, send people in with Matt. And I did a whole series of EPs on VIP records with a load of DJs, but it went pretty fast from there, I think. I didn't really pay any attention to what was going on. I just loved being in the studio, basically.
And this was what, like mid to late 90s about?
Yeah, no, I'd say this was later than that. I'd say this was because I didn't leave college till 95 and messed around probably for the rest of 95. 96, I think I really started in studio properly.
Okay. And at that time, like if maybe we call it like late 90s, what was going on in the dance scene around you? Like what was big? If garage was still kind of like an upstart thing, what was the big thing at the time?
I mean, for me, I can only speak from my experience, but It was hardcore, jungle, drum and bass. That's all I was really interested in. I didn't know anything. I had no interest in any other kind of music whatsoever. So, I mean, I think drum and bass and jungle and stuff was very big, probably from 89 to like 95, it felt like, or maybe 90 to 94, but 90 to 92 felt like the sort of sweet spot for that stuff.
Yeah.
That's when I was going to Laserdrome in Peckham. That's when those are exactly the sort of years I was at college. So yeah, from my point of view, it was just drum and bass was massive. That's all I was interested in,
Mm-hmm. And how did you come to enjoy garage? Was it just seeing the reaction and realizing that you had some aptitude? Or did you were there certain tunes you came around to that kind of opened your brain up a little bit?
My experience is pretty much from the producer, from the studio. So, I had this moment with drum and bass and jungle. Like I'd buy records, I'd go to the record shop at lunchtime. I couldn't wait to get them home. I'd be mixing in my bedroom the whole time. I never had that with garage. It's kind of like, I'd sort of had my bedroom DJ music fascination moment. And when I started making garage, I sort of wasn't that really interested in bedroom DJing or anything anymore. I was just interested in samplers, studio, making records. So for me, it was about, like we talked about before, when I heard something really amazing, but from a music maker's point of view, I'd just be like, right, I'm going to do something better than that now. I don't think I ever really sat around listening to garage music all day. That wasn't enough for me. Like, I need to be making it.
Yeah, and maybe that's some of that competitive edge as well, is, once you saw that, oh, like I could really make some inroads here, it's like, well, how far can we take this?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So when did you write Sincere then? Because that was also late 90s, right? Like you said, it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think I did that in my bedroom at home in 1996.
Crazy,
probably.
Man.
Yeah.
Making that, that record, the whole Sincere album to me, man, is like it's a near perfect album. And
thanks, dude.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's when I say that, I don't know how you look at it. I'll maybe you tell me how you look at it now in a minute. But to me, like when I talk about a near perfect album, it's not just that the music is good, because of course the music's good, but it's so cohesive, and there's like kind of this interesting energy between like super raw and super polished. And to me, it just kind of like, if at that time, if you wanted to tell somebody, to explain to somebody like what was going on with garage and like why it was cool, that you could just sort of front to back play that album, and by the end, so I feel like someone would be like, "Oh, I get it," like
right, yeah. Well, yeah, I'm proud to have made a record that can be used like that. Definitely.
So Sincere, for people listening who may not know, it's both the lead single and the name of the album. But as a single, was it just a crazy reaction off the top? Like, when did you start thinking like, I should make an album? I should like put something together behind this?
I mean, the story behind Sincere, the single was, I made it in my bedroom like 96, and I was making records with other people. I hadn't really done any stuff by myself. And I think I went with my manager at the time to a distribution company to try and release it, do a vinyl run as you used to then, like do 1,000 vinyls or something, and just do it directly with the distributor. So they just have the vinyls delivered to them, and then they take it to the shops and see how it does. And they sort of, I remember playing it to a lady there, and she was like, "No, it's not. You need to be making stuff a bit more like this." So yeah, at the beginning, it got shut down really, and the people didn't like it, which I was cool with, because I'm just like, it's just another little thing. I wasn't like, right, I've made this seminal record, it's gonna change the world or anything. It was just another track on a DAT for me. And then I don't know quite how it popped out. A guy called Arthur in Reading at Record Basement heard it, I think, from the DAT tape, and he kind of decided to release it. And then I think from there, Pete Tong heard it or got promo or something, and he made it his essential tune, I think 3 weeks running or something. And so from that point, it started to go mad. And then all the majors were like, "We want to sign you for an album." And I was like, I never really thought about doing an album, but yeah, I'm up for it. Like, give us a load of money and I'll go to the studio, no problem.
Was that your first real taste of success or opportunity in the game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I had a good run of working with different DJs and doing remixes with them in different studios and stuff. And at the same time, I was starting to develop as just like a traditional engineer, as in a recording and mixing engineer. And I was working in big studios in London, like in my 20s, doing big sessions on big desks, recording stuff. And so that was going on as well. And really, I always thought I was going to be a traditional sort of engineer in big studios, and then progress on to be a traditional producer, not an electronic producer, but a recorder of bands and microphones and that kind of thing. But it just took a bit of a twist.
And I mean, part of that too is also going from behind the scenes to the guy on the stage, right? Because once the Sincere album comes out, I mean, you were, I don't mean this in a negative way, but you were kind of like the poster boy for that sound. And I feel like all of a sudden, your name was everywhere. Probably your face was everywhere. Did you enjoy that part of it? Like the public, the almost celebrity of it when it was happening?
I'd say no, but there were parts of it that were fun. It was fun getting driven around in big cars and going to award things and stuff like that. But no, I didn't dine out on the celebrity side of it. It was nice to not queue up in a few places and get given some free kit and stuff like that. But no, that's never been my raison d'etre. It's kind of like making music's my thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But you were comfortable with it at least?
Not entirely. No, not entirely.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It might be better that you weren't, man. Sometimes I think it's better to be slightly less comfortable with it than to be too comfortable with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, because you did at that time, Like I'm harping on it because I just want to make the point of like how crazy it seemed from my perspective. Like it seemed like, because you were doing, like late night TV show performances, that kind of thing, like full on shit that like pop stars do, right? At a certain point.
Yeah, definitely. There was probably a year or two where all that was going on. Yeah.
I mean, did any of that like leave an impression, or was it all just kind of like surreal and like, yeah, this is fun, but kind of weird?
Yeah, I guess it was kind of surreal, but you sort of get the impression when that stuff happens to you that this is how it's going to be. It's just like, all right, they've discovered my music. Everyone really loves it. So I've sort of made it now.
Right.
But it doesn't actually last that long. And then sort of looking back on it, you realize that the power and reach that a major record label has is extraordinary. You just suddenly think, oh, I'm doing 12 interviews today. That's just because they've heard my music and they want to speak to me. When in fact, it's because the record company made you a priority, and there's tens of people like making it all happen. So yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. At that time, and it was really good fun, but not sustainable in the long run. I don't think.
Well, and I have to assume your touring and traveling and all that was going crazy at the same time. Did it get to be overwhelming at a certain point?
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of airports and aeroplanes. Even when I go on holiday now, I'm a bit like, when I go to airports. So yeah, I've been scarred by the travel experience, definitely.
Yeah, I can imagine, man. Because I mean, you were one of the few from that scene. I mean, I saw you. I was born in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I saw you there, probably touring for Sincere. I think around the year 2000, somewhere in there. And from that scene, like the two-step garage scene, I mean, to go international with it, you must have been one of the only ones. I don't think there were a lot.
No, I don't know who else was. I did a lot in the US because that record came out with Def Jam, Island Def Jam.
Oh, okay.
So I got a booster over there, and I kind of did the whole New York thing and the radio thing, and a lot of touring around it. So yeah, I think I looked back one year, I'd been to the States there and back 16 times, I think, in a year. I was kind of there the whole time, pretty much.
Man, it's wild, man. And, continuing on from there, you put out your second album, which is Cut to the Chase, a few years later, which that was also still a major label thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And was that like that? And then after that, was that when you sort of became a little, not disillusioned, but like the major label thing, like you were saying, can only last so long. You can only be in the spotlight for so long. Did you like what happened at that point? You put out the second album. There's probably expectations after the first one being this big smash. Like, what was that period like?
Yeah, I mean, it's the whole garage thing sort of went downhill before that album came out. So it was a very weird time. It must have been 2003 or 4 or something. The whole label that I was on, Talking Loud, completely disintegrated. Like everyone at the top had left. People like Ronnie Size and Crust and all that had all been dropped or left. And by the time that album came out, there was just one guy called Dan sitting at a desk, and he was the whole record label. So it was a pretty sorry time, really. And yeah, the whole sort of garage thing had become a dirty word, and it just really wasn't a good time to release a record like that. Like a lot of stuff on that record is fairly R&B-ish. I'm trying to sort of move away from it,
Yeah.
And then after that, it just became, it was kind of like, I was thinking, I need to do something else. I need to, I started a band, started doing kind of house music, just trying loads of different things, because it was just dead. It was dead. It wasn't just me, it was the whole scene.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, again, we talked about how everything's cyclical and everything has its time, but Yeah, the fall or the decline of like two-step and garage. Again, from my outsider's perspective, like there did seem to be this perspective or this opinion that like it just kind of got corny. Like certainly there was a lot of pop music, especially in the UK, that was literally just two-step and garage at that time. But then also there was the other side of it too, like more on the MC side, where it also kind of had like a grittier reputation, right?
Yeah, I mean that whole the MC thing coming in kind of it got a bit more grimy. I mean, it was the beginning of grime, funnily enough,
actual
grime,
as
well.
Yeah.
But I think we'd had a really poppy, sheeny, flowery, vocally bright sort of version of garage, and then as with all these things, you say everything's cyclical. It is. It kind of went underground, and a dirtier sound came. And with that came a different sort of attitude, and then people sort of gone off it anyway, and it just sort of dribbled away, really.
Is it funny for you, or is it entertaining or fun at all to see it come back a bit? Because I feel like in the last couple of years, last 5 years, there's been a lot of new tunes coming out from big names and like good songs that are cribbing a lot from that original garage two-step movement. Yeah,
I mean, I'm always slightly, immune to people sort of saying, yeah, it's coming back. But like people have been saying that to me for 20 years, as though I don't really care, to be honest.
Yeah.
But, so like, oh, really? I've got the best news for you, Matt, ever. Garage is coming back, and I'd be like, oh, thank God great. For that. I can't wait to get back into it. I'd just be like, yeah, whatever. But I do agree with you in the last few years. I think what's happened is that garage has just become sufficiently far away from its heyday, from its emergence, that it's now been solidified as like a bona fide musical genre, and I think if you look at other genres as well, it probably happened with drum and bass. It kind of dived down for a bit. And now drum and bass is like, it's not going anywhere. It's part of the history of dance music. And I think it's only recently that that's really happened to garage. And now you talk to younger people like 18, 19, 20, and they're like, yeah, garage is cool, but I remember a time when it's like, people couldn't even say the word, So and I think the same thing happened to dubstep after garage. That was massive, and then it just died overnight. And I think dubstep's probably going to be the next one to become a bona fide, musical genre. I bet you that's coming next. They kind of all go in tandem. It seems like you need a buffer of 15 years or something, and then suddenly it's like, yeah, it's cool,
Yeah, it's just like enough time passes where you can look back objectively and be like, well, wait, why was this cool? What was actually unique or interesting about this? And then you can kind of, to bring it back, you can sort of pick and choose like, the juiciest bits, and you don't have to take the whole thing with all the baggage that, we had back in the original days.
Yeah.
It's funny too, talking about dubstep, because in the US, like dubstep couldn't be bigger, right? Dubstep is just insane here.
Oh, is it at the moment?
Oh, it's crazy, but it's the US version, right? So it's almost like heavy metal here.
Right, yeah.
It's basically like US producers looking at what Flux Pavilion did and then just like cranking the volume 10 times past that,
Yeah.
It's very much. Yeah, exactly. That's a big hit right now, what you just saw. Yeah.
But it's not it's not the rootsy kind of reggae sort of dusty dubstep like Marla DMZ kind of vibe, is it?
No, it's not. And I think you're right that sort of thing will probably come back. Like US will get hip to that after we're done with this like aggressive wave. But I think probably in the UK too. It's funny because I talked to a lot of dubstep people on this show too. And I've had Flux and other UK people. And yeah, he was kind of lamenting. He was like, yeah, man, he's like, I can go tour in the US all day long, but like I can barely get a gig in the UK. It's weird.
But it's kind of nice as well that even though we have the net and, there's no such thing as the boundaries are so much lowered because there's less tribalism going on. Whereas, back in the early days, there was no internet and, it's pirate radio driving around in cars. And it was very much like geo-located, different forms of music. But it's kind of nice to know, actually, that there still is some kind of separation, albeit, country to country. But it's kind of mad that stuff can still go on. It's good. It shows you that there's still different parts of the world have different energy and different vibrations.
Yeah, that's so true, man. And you never know. Yeah, it's always a good idea if you can to take that outside perspective that your reality may not be the only reality, right? And
yeah.
No, that's super interesting, man. So, after that point, like, obviously you put out so many records. Like you've been so prolific, man. Like when we were coming to talk, I was looking at your discography and I was just like, oh man, we're not going to be able to talk about half of this. But, throughout that period, like coming off the second album, the decline of garage, if we're calling it that, was it kind of a consistent thing for you? Or do you look at that period of time as like separate phases of your career musically? Because you were putting out records, singles, EPs pretty steadily. And I feel like the quality level was pretty consistent throughout. But yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, do you look at it as separate phases or does it kind of just feel like you've just been pushing that whole time?
No, yeah, I think it does. It feels like, the beginning phase around Sincere, the major record label stuff was one section. And then I think after that, it felt like there was 5, 6, 7 years of going pretty underground again, because that's when I started my label up again. I started running a club night in London.
Oh, okay.
That was actually really great. We used to do Thursday nights monthly at a place in Brixton. It used to be called Plan B. It's called Phonox now, I think. Okay. And then we did that. Moved to Shoreditch as well. So that probably ran for like a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. And I was still releasing records on my label. But yeah, so it felt like a different period, but it was cool. It was like, right, the majors have gone. I'm just going to go underground again and just make vinyl and just carry on making tunes. Because like going back to what I said at the beginning, I'm never going to be like, oh, I don't really fancy the studio anymore. I'm going to go and do something. Yeah, it's not going to happen. So I was always going to be producing something.
Yeah, and too, I'm sure that felt refreshing to kind of like pare everything down, take it down to the studs kind of mentality. But then at the same time, it also wasn't like MJ Cole wasn't the only thing you were doing, right? Because you were also producing for other people and working with a lot of, you've done so many. Again, it's impossible, but it's, making music with Dizzy Rascal or Stormzy or even, I read that you like wrote something for Mary J. Blige as well.
Oh, yeah, I did. Yeah.
What was the story behind that one?
So that was, I'm good friends with Jimmy Nates, who kind of writes a lot with Sam Smith and Disclosure, those guys. And I think Mary J. Blige was coming over to London to do a record with those guys. It was called the London Sessions. And I was kind of working with Jimmy at the time. And he said, look, we've got Mary J. Blige coming in, like send me some instrumentals that you've got. And I just sent him like 5 or 6 different instrumentals. And it so happened I wasn't in the room, but they'd written to my instrumental, and that became Nobody But You, I think it's called, the song. So that was written with her, Jimmy Nape, Sam Smith. So yeah, that was kind of like a bit of luck, really.
Man, I mean, when you're working with other people or making music that is for somebody, especially like a vocalist or an artist not in your genre, do you approach the production process differently? Do you approach the writing process differently?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm writing with someone else and it's for their project, I'm much more likely just to go to the piano and just try and think in terms of songwriting and harmony and structure, and then deal with the production afterwards. And when I approach production for other people, I'm trying to think in a not necessarily a garagey way. You know, I've done quite a few things that are quite cinematic and piano led and sort of like half-timey things, you know, like it was one of my records, but Waking Up that I did with Freya Ridings was kind of like that. And it's quite a lot of the stuff I've done with Becky Hill has been sort of quite down tempo. So yeah, to answer your question, I think if I was making a garage record for myself, I'd start off on the computer and it would be samples and stuff like that. But if I'm working with songwriters, I go to the piano. That's kind of my home anyway, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, man. I think the piano certainly is part of your signature sound, if we can call it that. I mean, just the way you write it, maybe part of it is coming from a classical background. I've always felt that, yeah, the melodies you're choosing, the lines you're playing, all of that, it's always unique, you know?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, man.
It's just rubbish.
But I think that's why it works, right? Is like it's rubbish that your brain is spitting out, but only you have your brain, you know?
Yeah. That my mangled brain from years of raving.
I don't know, man. I think you're doing all right. I think we could point to 10 people right now who's mangled it way worse.
Yeah, no, I did. I think I had a good amount of fun, like at the right time, I think. And then I sort of chilled out at the right time as well in my life, I think. So I think I kind of saved myself from a different reality.
Sure.
Possibly.
Yeah. Was that a conscious thing? Do you remember? Was it like I got to slow this down, or, I got to take this more seriously kind of thing?
Yeah. I just got bored of, being like hungover and sticky and, you know, going to bed super late and everyone's going to work outside and it getting hot. And I just kind of like, and, you know, I got married and I had kids and stuff. And so as soon as I had kids, I was kind of like, it felt much more natural just to live a sort of more ordinary life, but I still, you know, luckily had time to be in the studio and do my thing as well.
Yeah, that's good, man. I mean, I feel lucky in the same way that I think to do this life, you have to have at least a little bit of an addictive personality, just because this kind of stuff, it really is. You said it earlier, it really is an addiction, whichever part of it you kind of latch on to. But then, yeah, I've always felt lucky too that the addictive part of my personality didn't extend too far to drugs and alcohol and all that. Cause we both know people where it does. And it's just like, whatever it is, it's like you could easily get addicted to it. And that'd be a lot rougher, man.
Yeah, totally, man.
This is kind of just a producer nerd thing, but it's something I've always noticed about your work. And I just wanted to ask you to see if you have any thoughts about it. Is I think the piano thing is unique. I think also the way you chop samples and vocals is very unique. I think that is like almost instantly identifiable about your work. Is just like the way, the choices you make, chopping up little micro samples, taking vocals, flipping them, picking out little bits. Like, I think that's something you've done a lot throughout your career. I don't think anyone else does it quite like you do it. Todd Edwards is maybe the closest, but you know, that's his own thing. And is that something like, is that just like a fun thing you go to naturally? Or is it something you've thought about or worked on?
No, I don't think I thought about it. I mean, I think it was probably inspired by listening to Todd Edwards records in the mid to late 90s. And I remember just having this moment of thinking like, wow, you can use a vocal as a percussion instrument. And that's the whole thing about it. It's like, man, I can chop into this vocal at very interesting places and I can get a different attack on it. And it can be a percussive sound that I can play on my keyboard as I would play drums. That's really what those chops are about. It's kind of me scatting. I mean, because I play everything in. I never really write anything on the screen. So everything I do is played in. So all those vocal chops they always come from my fingers. And yeah, I think there's that main thing that you can use a vocal or a music chop as a percussion instrument, and it can be a very short thing. That's always got me going. And really the whole chopping thing is part of my enjoyment that I have when I'm doing remixes. I love doing remixes because they're like a set piece. It's very set. It's like, here is your source material. It's just you. Now do something exciting with that source material. So I love getting source material. I do a big job on it. So, time stretch it, then I'll kind of reverse it. I'll put things together, pitch it down, put a reverb on it, resample that, take chops of that. And I like to create a whole palette before I actually start doing anything. I very rarely, with a remix, get all the audio laid out and just start with a drum beat and see where it goes. It does happen sometimes, but not often. But yeah, for me, the vocal chop thing comes from that whole sampling, remixing idea that you can mangle stuff and turn it into other things and repurpose it in a completely different way. So vocals as drums, instruments as drums.
I love that, man. That actually makes a lot of sense. And talking about the remixes too, I mean, just to give you your flowers for a second, I mean, you've done so many remixes for giant artists and ones that, at least for me, are kind of like just like definitive remixes. The remix you did for De La Soul in particular, I don't know for you if that was a big one, but for me, I found that vinyl at the right time when I was kind of, like you were saying, you would buy a drum and bass vinyl and be so excited to run home and mix it. That was kind of that period for me. And
right. I'm glad to know that. Yeah.
Yeah, man. That De La Soul remix you did, I mean, I wore out that vinyl, and I just never heard, again, it's kind of that, what you were saying, like flipping it that way, taking a group like De La Soul and making it so light and bouncy. And it was, I don't know, it was one of those that opened my perspective, man. I mean, you did De La Soul, Amy Winehouse, Mariah Carey, I have a list here, Alicia Keys, up until, recently, like Flume and Disclosure. I don't even know what the question is here. Do any of them stand out? Were any of them seminal for you?
I get asked this quite a bit, and I sort of have a standard answer, but I don't really know if that's a real answer.
It's okay if they don't.
They don't have a. If I look into my mind and think about the titles of the remixes that I've done, they don't really have any significance to me. But if I hear them playing, like, I'm writing to my Twitch stream at the moment, and when I've been on Twitch, and I think one time there was 2 DJs having a like DJ off thing on a Twitch stream, and one of them was playing loads of my records. I just found myself in the chat kind of talking about where that record was made and some interesting like technical stuff about it. I think my answer is, like, when I hear something that I've sort of forgotten about, then it becomes part of me again. And I'm probably more interested in that than anything else. A bit like the day after I've made a record in the studio, my favorite bit of music is the one that I made last night. And it tends to sort of go off after that. I think I find the same thing with remixes and music that I've made before. It's not naturally at the front of my mind, but if I hear it again or someone's playing it, then it becomes interesting to me again, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, man. And I think that's probably a healthy way to be. That it sounds like you're not putting too much weight on the work that you've done and keeping yourself just excited for the next thing. And then you can kind of later look back and be like, oh, that was a cool one, that sort of thing. I think that's a pretty healthy attitude.
I think it's totally like that. Then it's kind of like, it's like a treat when you hear stuff. I mean, I'm very much of the opinion that, once you've made a piece of music and it's been mastered and it's been released to the world, it's not really mine anymore. And I feel that I have a completely clear creative mind to go in and start doing something else. I think I have to clear my mind from everything I've done before every time I work. It's the purest way of doing it.
Well, and that, I mean, that makes me think about the Madrugada album that you dropped over the pandemic, like what, in 2020, I believe, that was,
Mm,
almost an ambient album. And you were talking, it's like maybe the most fully realized version of the cinematic tendencies you were
mm,
talking about before.
yeah.
Did that record feel different? Because that's such a departure from what you're known for publicly,
Yeah. I mean, it felt very natural for me. I was aware that it was completely different, but it felt excitingly different. It didn't, I mean, that's probably the most natural piece of music I've ever made. And I made that album like incredibly quickly. Most of it, apart from the strings that we recorded at the end that had to be arranged and get studios, most of it was done in like 8-10 weeks or something like that. And it was kind of a mad time in my life. I didn't really think about anything I was doing. I kept a journal. It's mad looking back through the journal. I was doing like one of them a day and just having piano ideas all the time. So it felt completely natural for me to do that. I wasn't like, oh shit, I've got to stay away from the drums, or oh, I can't have a song on this. Because it felt like my first album in that side of me. So it was like going back to the little boy playing the piano, and he's kind of been there throughout this whole garage thing. And suddenly it was his turn to make his first album using a whole life of inspiration. And that's how it felt to me.
Wow. I mean, that's beautiful, man. And it's, yeah, you got to soundtrack a movie or something, man. Because hearing that, it was just like, oh, man.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, everyone keeps saying that. Hey, film directors, I'm ready.
yeah, we'll do our best to put that out there.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, I guess the only other thing to talk about is sort of what you're doing right now and what you've got coming up and what you're excited about. Are there any, I mean, this far into the career, you're, like we were saying, you're still productive, you're still excited. The music is still, like, even the new one or newest one you put out called You Got Me, like hearing that,
yeah, thanks.
Still sounds, like fresh and vital. It's still a banger. Like, it's impressive, that you can still just make shit that works in the current, like, milieu, I guess is the word. But other than that, like, it still sounds fresh and innovative and exciting. Like, what are you doing right now? What are you working on? Is there anything people should be looking out for? Anything you want to get out there?
Yeah, so the couple of records that I released in the last month, I Need and You Got Me, just like me warming up the pipes again, little sample-based things. And yeah, I'm making an album as we speak, and there's going to be, I'm calling it MJ3 at the moment. It feels like Madrugada is a separate thing, and this is like number 3 album. So yeah, I'm quite deep into doing that. And I'm working with some really good people, got some really great features on that. So I've got a record coming at the end of August called Feel It, and that's with an artist called Piri and Tommy, who had a big record called Soft Spot over here in the UK. Really young guys, amazing. So I've got that coming at the end of August, and then we're going to start rolling out singles after that, which is going to lead to an album. And I'm planning to do a live show for the album as well.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah.
So yeah, it's all going on.
That's exciting, man. And yeah, I know you've done the live performance thing. There's a bunch more we could talk about, but maybe once you actually drop the album, man, I'd love to come back. There's so much more.
Yeah, that'd be good timing. Here. Yeah, to talk again. I'll have lots more to talk about then. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely, man. Well, this has been great, man. I just have the final question. It's the same question I ask at the end of each one of these interviews. Kind of just a simple, like, first thing that pops into your head kind of question.
Yeah.
Just looking for a memory from your life, a moment from your life. Could be any time when you were a kid or yesterday, anytime when in that memory, in that moment, music really, really had a deep impact on you, really affected you strongly in that moment.
I remember driving back from a DJ gig in my green VW Corrado VR6. I think I'd done a gig in Swansea, like in Wales, in the UK. and I was driving over the Severn Bridge, a very famous bridge that crosses between Wales and the mainland. Well, it's over a river, actually. A beautiful bridge, and it must have been like the sun was just coming up. It was like the perfect moment. I'd done a gig. I'm sort of like still a bit sweaty in my car, smoking cigarettes, no doubt. And I was listening to Cinematic Orchestra, the Cinematic Orchestra album. And I've forgotten the name of the track, but it's where there's kind of operatic, you know, and then and that happened just as I was going over that bridge, and the sun came up, and it was just like this magic moment in my life. And it was kind of like, I don't know, I felt good because I've been DJing, and I was driving home. The car felt really good, and it just looked amazing. And this soundtracked that moment perfectly for me. I'll always remember that.
I mean, that's beautiful, man, because that's, you know, when we watch a movie and there is a soundtrack that affects us so strongly, that's then having that moment in real life. You're like, oh no, like this is actually living. Like, this is what living feels like. This is what that movie was trying to approximate, right?
Yeah. It was like a real life perfect sync moment.
God, man. Yeah, we only get a few of those, I feel like, in a lifetime, man. You got to hold on to those.
Yeah. I will hold on to that one. What's yours, by the way? What's yours?
Oh, man. What is mine? I mean, the first one that just popped into my head, this is much less cinematic than yours, but this is just the first thing that I thought of when you said that is, I was a kid, probably like 13, 14 years old. And my friend had just shown me Green Day for the first time.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember I think I convinced my parents to get me the Green Day, the Dookie CD, which was like, you know, their first big one here in the States, at least. And I just remember putting it on my parents' stereo hi-fi, which I remember in detail, similar to the way you were describing yours, and turning it up just in the middle of my living room. And it opens with Welcome to Paradise, which is just a guitar, like just heavy riffage, you know, like power chord guitar kind of thing. And I just remember the reaction in my body, I had never had that before, where it was like I wasn't in control of my body anymore. And all of a sudden I was like bouncing up, and I was sitting on the floor, like bouncing up and down, probably looking like there was something medically wrong with me. and I couldn't stop. And I remember that feeling of not being able to like stop moving or control my body.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah. What a moment.
And just that moment. I don't think I had felt that before. And that's absolutely part of why I still like dance music, because that still happens to me to this day when the right song plays.
It's a very special thing, music.
It is, man. Amen. I don't think I think that about sums it up. I couldn't say it better than that.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super fun, man. Thank you for taking the time to do it. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks, Willy. No problem, man. Loved it.
Yeah. Have a great rest of your evening, man. And hope to talk to you soon.
Cool, dude. Take care. Lovely to speak to you.
Yeah, great to talk to you, man. Peace.
See you in a bit, man.
Have a good one.
See you in a bit.
All right. Bye.